screen, so. Okay, we're on now. All right, I'd like to call to order the Littleton Board of Health meeting for June 28th, 2016. You guys are on for 7:15. So first thing, board member reports. Any reports from anyone? Gino?
No, at the moment, nothing important.
I'm just curious if they've been doing testing at the lake on an ongoing basis. Are we getting the results?
Haven't gotten anything.
They haven't furnished any results from
Nope.
testing?
Have they opened officially yet, or did they do that July 4th?
Yeah, I think they're officially open.
Okay. Usually I've seen them in the packet before, but.
Yeah. No, I haven't gotten anything.
Taylor Street, there was a site visit with the Attorney General and Mr. Ernestine. That's moving forward. My understanding is the next step is it goes to court. There's not much else we can talk about on that. So beyond that, minutes. I think we do have at least one set of minutes here. We've got the minutes of June 14th. Give folks a minute to review them. So I said Ethics Commission and that about Jen not being able to vote. I think it's Attorney General Office, right?
No, it's state ethics,
Oh, it is State Ethics. Okay, good.
and that's still the same status.
Still pending. Okay.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Under discussion of 370 Harwood, last sentence on that first page, Vinnie Mula has prepared a timetable to shut down. You note Chair Gould stated. So I think that would be Attorney Gould.
I think it's because she's chair of the ZBA. So. Shelley forgot what minute she was doing that.
You know how much I love minutes.
Other than that, that was it.
Gino, let us know when you're done.
I'm all done.
All right, do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes with the changes noted. Minutes from the meeting of June 14, 2016.
Second. Okay, any correspondence?
Want all those in favor?
Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Sorry about that.
The thing about the water testing, they're supposed to start that in May, as soon as people are swimming in it.
Yeah.
And they should be giving us a report, and I think they're supposed to be giving Keith Bergman a report now, too. So I'm not sure why that's not
Can you shoot
happening.
an email to Jim? Because I think one of his staffers usually pulls a sample and
Yep.
just see where it is.
Yeah. Because now you're getting into the heavy use season, you really want to know what the quality is. Because we've had to shut it down.
Yeah, my son's lifeguarding, so I'd like to know too. So
Oh, yeah. Tell them keep the dogs and the babies off the beach.
I think that's his main
usually-
job, actually. So
Usually what does it.
yeah, those diapers, I think.
The diapers certainly do it.
Do we have any correspondence? So do we wait 10 minutes for the discussion of the Fuhrers, I assume?
We are, yeah.
It's a discussion, so you can start.
Yeah.
All right, let's just start.
anytime.
So we have a discussion. Why don't I let you folks introduce your issue and come on up. You're the only ones here, and it's an informal meeting.
So Jeff, Mary, we live at 91 Nagok Hill Road. we're just.
You can come up as well.
Yeah. We just want to talk about there's a two-bedroom deed restriction on our property right now that dates back a few years. A quick background, we purchased the property in the summer of 2013. Didn't have a functioning septic system. I'll get into some of the details, but the property currently has a restriction. What we want to talk about is a little bit of the history of why it is there, because it's not entirely intuitive, but then also talk about some important evidence that bears on whether it needs to have a two-bedroom restriction or not. So let me just get into that. I should say, Jim Carr, we were talking to Jim Carr last fall about a different matter, and we began to discuss a little bit about some septic issues, and he suggested, after hearing some of what's going on here with the two-bedroom restrictions, he said, you should probably bring this to the Littleton Board of Health. It doesn't make lots of sense the way it is. Maybe that in the end, your ruling or the Neshoba Board of Health's ruling is it's got to stay, but he thought it was worth discussing. So do we. We're not going to die either way if it goes one way or the other. We're planning on staying in the house till we can't take care of it anymore, which we hope is a few more years still. So that's not an issue, but just would probably make things simpler somewhere down the road. So the facts are the house is currently and has always been a three-bedroom house, and it's always been assessed as a three-bedroom house. The site currently has a three-bedroom septic capacity system on it. I sent, I think you, Brad, and I don't know if others were copied, just a documentation from Rob Oliva, who's with Ross Associates, to say, yep, that's a three-bedroom septic system, just so that's clear. The deed, as I said, has a two-bedroom restriction on it right now. That was required by Neshoba Board of Health, Jim Gareffi, as a condition for ultimately obtaining an occupancy permit. We had to file the restriction. We actually thought at one point the Board of Health was going to do that. The Neshoba Board, we found out that we needed to do that, so we filed that because that was a condition for getting the permit. So why is there a two-bedroom restriction on it? So the previous septic system, which was in the house when we purchased it, had failed Title V inspection. After doing all the perk tests and the digging and so on, they were unable to find a suitable backup location for the system. So that meant it couldn't fully conform to Title V. And that meant that whatever previous septic permit was on file would apply. So when Neshoba first went to look for such a permit, they couldn't find one. So the ruling was, well, the fallback in this case, I'm not the expert, I'm just quoting the experts, but the fallback in this case is that because it was assessed as a three-bedroom house, then you call it a three-bedroom septic house. You can put that kind of a system there, and that's the way it would make sense. A bit later, Jim, I think, dug into the archives of the Neshoba Board of Health and found a permit that may apply to this dwelling. And it's important, if you don't have it, to maybe see that. You got that one, right? So this is what he was able to find. I asked Jim to send me the permit. We never saw it during the transactions back 3 years ago. But I asked Jim recently, so can you just send me a copy of the permit you have that justifies the two-bedroom restriction? So he sent this very nicely, quickly. And so what we see is that it's a permit for a property on Nagog Hill Road. It's certainly for John Morrison, who owns a number of properties on that road. It has no street number, it has no lot number, it has no square footage. It has very little on it except that certainly a property on Nagog Hill Road had a two-bedroom septic. There's no result of the perk test or anything else, but that's what we've got. We know that the property was owned by John Morrison. We also know that John Morrison owned somewhere around 5 or more properties on Nagog Hill Road at that time. And so, while I don't think we can prove that it is not the permit for 91 Nagog Hill, it seems as if it's really quite ambiguous as to whether this is actually the permit that would apply to our property. And if that's the case, then if there is not a pre-existing permit, then, again, I'm not the expert, but perhaps a reasonable way to go is to say, well, it's always been 3 bedrooms, it's assessed at 3 bedrooms, it has a 3-bedroom septic now, let's just call it a 3-bedroom property. I don't know what the legal hurdles are that need to be jumped to make that happen, but that's kind of where we are. It's just that that was how we got to the 2-bedroom restriction. This was the important, perhaps, evidence, and we're just saying, maybe it is, maybe it's not, it's a little sketchy. So that's what we're asking about tonight, really, is just, we think there's a reasonable doubt, I don't know if that's the right legal standard, reasonable doubt that this is a permit that does apply to this property.
So when you guys replaced the septic system?
Yes.
It was a 3-bedroom, capacity.
It's a three-bedroom capacity, that's.
Was it fully compliant with Title V, or were there restrictions?
There's some variances.
And I
So-
think that's what Jim's pointing to here, and Peter, you have more history of this than I do, so I'm not sure, but here's what Jim said: if the facility owner wants to increase the number of bedrooms in a facility, they would need to sewage, and I may have misspoke, because I think I spoke about capacity, but apparently there are other considerations as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
They would need a sewage disposal system in full compliance with Title V. Given the constraints of this site, no reserve area, well less than 100 feet from the leaching area, and reduction of groundwater offset from 4 to 2 feet, the applicant is not able to install a system in full compliance with Title V. Though the designer, Ross, made the leaching area large enough for a 3-bedroom system, the fact that the old permit was for 2 bedrooms and the applicant could not install a system for 3 bedrooms in full compliance with Title V means that the house must remain a 2-bedroom house in
So
accordance with
that is
Title V.
exactly the issue. There's no question that there are some restrictions placed
Right.
on the septic system because we couldn't find backup and so on. That's the reason that you would then revert to the previous permit to determine whether there's, and then the question is this a permit that applies to the property? And what we're saying is, it's a little hard to tell because it
So you
has
think that the
nothing-
previous permit may have actually been 3 bedrooms, or?
Could have been
Or
3,
non-existent.
or
Or
just didn't have
non-existent.
one, we didn't
Right.
we don't know. It's just, this doesn't give anything. I mean, even if it had the lot size matched up perfectly, we say, okay, well, maybe that's more evidence. Doesn't have the lot number, lot size, street number, and given that Mr. Morrison owned a number of properties in Agog Hill, some of which have septic systems, one of which I know has a cesspool, not a septic system, but several of which have septic, it's hard to know whether this applies.
Didn't you guys come before the board before for something, or you were doing a renovation?
This is I don't know if you know the property in 91 Nagog Hill. It's an old 1848 Greek revival, we think 1848 approximately. Revival. So yes, we came to the board to make sure we could approve the kinds of renovations and addition that we were doing. Part of that hinged on, you remember? I know that you were here for sure, so it's nice to see you again. But yeah, we had to make sure, for all sorts of reasons, that the kinds of renovations and the kinds of addition we were doing would conform with both Board of Health and other restrictions Littleton might have in mind. So happy to do that, and at the time, so interestingly.
Was there any discussion at that time of the septic? Wasn't there an extra
Some-
bedroom, or didn't it basically add a
There's a
room?
lot of,
No.
there's like 11 rooms in the house. I mean, it's a huge house.
There's 7 rooms in the house now.
Yeah, it was a huge addition that they were allowed to put on.
Yeah, we put a large square footage addition, but there were absolutely restrictions on the number of rooms. That was part of the discussion. And the way both Neshoba and your Board of Health ruled was that we were subject to a limit of 7 rooms maximum. To do that, we actually had to remove a room, remove a division between a room, and now the thing has 3 bedrooms, as it's always had, plus 4 other rooms total in the house. And that's it. It's a good-sized house for sure.
So
But
j-
that's...
And
yeah.
just to clarify on the previous discussion, when we came in that time, there was no discussion on the 2-bedroom restriction
Right.
because Jim
That
had
happened later.
indicated that he had a definite permit, a 2-bedroom permit for this house, which we never questioned, we accepted him.
But this was an issue at that point.
So it
yeah.
was-
It wasn't,
an issue
we
then,
were
we
learning
said-
what the restrictions were at that time, but that's what we understood to be true. But
And,
now that we have the permit.
Our only question now, the only reason this comes up now is because we hadn't actually seen that permit then, and once we saw it, then we said, and that's when actually Jim Carr said, we should let you rule on whether this permit applies to our house. And if it does, then we stay with everything the way it is.
Yeah, we're not going anywhere, and that's
Yes,
fine.
yes, yes, Mr.
Christina, go ahead.
Well, according to what it says here, the design was made, the leaching field area now, 3-bedroom. And they got a septic system also for 3-bedroom. So if you have a leach field big enough for 3-bedroom,
800
tell me
square.
that I'm wrong. Peter, tell me I'm wrong. If they can't find the application, and...
Well, first of all, the deed restriction would have been put on by us, the Board of Health. It wouldn't be Jim Gareffi.
No,
It's put on by us.
Jim called us.
Jim
and
called
told
us and asked
we
us to
had
file it. He
put
gave us the
on.
papers to file it,
Was
so
it from
we
us?
filled them out and we filed them with the Registry of Deeds.
Yeah,
under his
but
restriction.
we tell
He's our
them,
agent.
Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, yes, so you have the
tell
authority
them,
to
you're
do,
going to
right.
have to have a deed restriction.
No, exactly. Based on Jim's reading of what he had for the...
Yeah, a couple of things. So this is from my memory, and part of this job that's makes it lousy. Sometimes you hate to vote a different way than you would like to. But anyways, this permit, Morrison had the big house, which is right at the crossroads.
Up the hill, yeah,
Which
right.
was excuse me, two apartment. And across the street, he had also a toilet and stuff that he had in there, but there wasn't really bedrooms, it was just a workplace. And down the street where you folks are, he had this, I think they put that in about that time in '67, and across the street, he had another, like an apartment that had
Right.
a cesspool.
Right.
So it looks like the permit was for that particular area, and unfortunately, I think when they were putting it in, if I remember right, not this particular one, but yours, they were really had a tough time, because I think Morrison had two systems in there. Do you remember seeing two systems?
Not in our property, no, I mean,
Well, when they
No.
tore it out.
no, when they tore it, there wasn't, no, they had to tear out the old thing, we knew that, there was a tank there that was failing, but when they did other
They
excavations,
had some
there was
kind of a
nothing else.
convoluted thing.
He had a convoluted water system, so there was an issue about
Yeah.
his supplying water to the dwelling across the street, which is probably not in conformance, and that's obviously been cut off. There was that. There were a bunch of irrigation systems, which we're still finding pieces of from time to time as we bring the land back into shape. But, no, we didn't run across anything
And
else
I
during
think
this.
that I'd have to really look again, but I think at the time, when we looked at this, we understood that there was an issue about 3 bedrooms, and the 2 bedrooms were on record. But I think one of the other mitigating factors was they really didn't get in a 3-bedroom system, which now I see with the reading stuff from Ross, that he says that the particular system they did put in is a 3-bedroom
Right.
system.
Right.
So I think at that particular point of time, that's why we asked to put the deed restriction on.
Yeah, I can't tell you the exact timeline of things. I do know, obviously, that the plans, the final plans for the septic system went back and forth. We weren't at all the meetings where those were discussed, but, you know, the final plans that showed a 3-bedroom capacity, because that's what ultimately was installed, were approved by you guys, I think. So that was Brian Badger who was doing the excavation and installation. So I'm pretty sure, but again, I wasn't at the meetings. I'm pretty sure that was all passed by you.
See, the problem
Later.
is, if we can't find a permit, we go by the assessor's card,
Right.
generally, we being the boards.
Yep.
And if we can't find that, or if there's something wrong with that, you're still kind of locked in a case like we have a 12-room house in Littleton, which you normally divide by 2. It's either rooms or bedrooms. But there was no way it could support 6 bedrooms,
Right.
the septic system. So we had to, and that's in place, it had 6 bedrooms in place, but we had to deed restrict that to 4 bedrooms because of the size of the system.
Right.
But on occasions, we have gone in, and if the system is in compliance, say a 3-bedroom system and it's 2-bedroom record, we have very rarely changed that, and I forget how we did it.
So here's the question I have, Peter. So it has the capacity, but there are some variances which suggest that it might be problematic.
Right.
I guess one of the questions we might ask ourselves, if somebody came to us with this, with this house and said, we're putting a new system and we gave these variances, would we allow it?
Right.
You know?
That was the question.
Cast
Well, they-
aside.
No, if
'cause-
they were doing a house and they wanted to, like, put in.
If they wanted to put in a
just the
3-bedroom
roadside,
system with this
I don't think the
configuration we
area
have.
would have supported, that's the problem, I think it wouldn't have supported.
So we wouldn't have, you know,
What's-
so the question, because there are a number of variances here that went along with that 3-bedroom capacity.
What's your lot size there, I forget?
1.4
Yeah,
acres.
that's big enough. They did a beautiful job.
But it's ledge.
Yeah, but it's not necessarily all related to the applicable to the septic system,
Material.
you know, especially
But
if it's
the
ledge.
leach- Yeah. the
So I
leach-
guess the question I'd ask ourselves is, okay, if they came to us and this was a lot, and they were putting a 3-bedroom home on there, and they had this septic system with these variances, what would we say?
Well, that's the problem, that's the, I think they're.
And unfortunately, we killed the blind side of that
Yeah.
study, so we, you know.
Well, Mike, so it's actually the question I have. It's exactly the question I have. So if it's in fact, in actuality, a 3-bedroom house, and the system's large enough for three-bedroom, capacity-wise, albeit lack reserve area, well less than 100 feet, reduction of groundwater from 4 to 2. Isn't it a three-bedroom system with variances? And then if it
If we
is,
had approved those variances.
but how do we get to where we can? Because it seems like we
approve the
can.
variances, right?
Yeah, but did we approve it for a three-bedroom? So we have people come in all the time with new construction and said, we got a house, it's 3 bedrooms, but we need A, B, and C variances.
That's
which
right.
Looks similar to yours, and we very often approve those. So I guess the question for the board is, if you came to us with new construction with this system and wanted 3 bedrooms, would we approve it?
And I guess my further question is, it sounds like we would, or at least we discuss it.
Right?
And if there's a possibility that we would, there has to be, and maybe there's not, maybe I'm being naive, but has to be some sort of way to get at this issue, because the issue is this sort of vague thing
Earlier
here,
permit, yeah.
right? And this earlier permit that sort of is locked it into a 2-bedroom, that seems like paperwork, and that seems like there's a way around this. If it looks like and is a 3-bedroom and the size is big enough, and we can approve these variances, and then I'm not necessarily saying we could, because, you know, some of this seems like it's like the well being close to 100 feet from the leaching area, but it still seems like this would be weird that we'd stop something just based on what looks like paperwork, and there must be a way to get it.
I mean, my issue
The
is,
problem would be is that would have been normally picked up by this board, whatever the board was consisted of that time.
I get that, but there's clearly a mistake. I mean, I look at this and there was a mistake somewhere, and we can't fix that? That seems weird
That I
to me.
can't tell you. You've got, the problem is you've
There
got
must be someone in this
Title
town.
V engineering rules.
No, I
And it goes
understand.
by bedrooms and room counts and stuff like that.
I understand that.
And you have to use existing data to do that. I don't have to do this.
by room count, you've got 4 bedrooms, I believe.
3.
No, 3,
Well, how many, you have 7, right?
7 rooms, 3 bedrooms,
That's
4
three
other
bedroom.
rooms.
That's 3 bedrooms, so you get,
Yeah.
So what do you get?
Generally, what you do is you do a total room
It's not
count
full,
Yep.
but it's something we can
and
discuss.
round down.
Very.
It used to be round up and move it.
oh, half it and round down? Because it used to be, it was
So
kitchen,
you have-
bedroom, kitchen, dining room, living room, and everything else was a bedroom. So,
I think we just looked up these rules too, I think what Peter's saying.
yeah, you're right, they've updated that, so,
Yeah,
okay.
So we changed that regulation, and instead of rounding up, they used to round up.
So you half it and round down.
If you had, 7 rooms, you would round up and you'd say, well, that's definitely got to be a 4-bedroom
Right.
system. And there was no getting around that. I mean, you could be living there with 2 people
Right.
and never use it, but it's their regulation. It's the-
So we're completely on board with we have to go by the Title V rules. That's absolutely right. But I think what Mr. Davis is saying, I think is the linchpin, which is that the only reason to go back to a 2-bedroom restriction is based on this documentation. So it's your judgment, perhaps consulting with the Neshoba board. I don't know if Jim's here.
No, Jim's not here.
But, because perhaps, is this a valid document to constitute a restriction that we need to go back to? And if so, and that's your judgment, we're done. And if not, I mean, if there's a question, to me, it seems like there's a question, but if you think there's a question, then I'm less clear on why.
So if this had the house number in Nagog Hill Road, I think it'd be a no-brainer, this is the house and this is what it was. You've got a conflicting assessors report, which isn't the first thing we go to. But in my mind, it still goes back to the system and whether it can handle that waste for a 3-bedroom. Obviously, it's got the capacity, but with variances due to the well and the groundwater setback and that sort of thing.
Right.
To me, the question is, if this were fresh and somebody came to us with a 3-bedroom dwelling with these variances, would we approve it?
So if it were a new house, and think of what the restrictions are, the wellhead, we use the existing well, that is where it is, and the
You're
foundation. is-
still on well water.
Yes, and we use the well where it was. If we're new construction and that were the constraint, you would probably figure out a way to move the house and the septic system or something, 10
But
feet.
assume we couldn't,
So
because
it's
we
off
have
by
to do
10
that for
feet.
this.
Well, but I'm just saying, if you want to think of the new construction as the benchmark, then you would probably figure out a way to get 10 feet further away. In this case, we couldn't because the well's there.
And
the
I'm saying,
foundation's-
with new construction with these constraints is the comparison, I guess, when we
Right.
approve this.
So that I
Yeah,
say-
I know realistically, we
fair,
find another
that's
way, but
fine.
would we approve a 3-bedroom system with this capacity and these variances?
So, and I don't know the question of that, or the answer to that question, but this and I get the whole Title V restriction and everything else, but this seems just like a paperwork error to me that can be fixed. There's got to be a process or an avenue of whether it's a ZBA, whether, I don't know what it is. I'm not smart enough to know that. But this, and I'm not saying just because you were to fix this deed restriction, we would necessarily approve this with the variances. But it seems to me it's frankly outright dumb that this is the hurdle.
Well, and
It's just dumb.
I'm concerned about the
I've
1967.
sat on this board for 9 years.
I don't care if it happens every day. It's still dumb, and there's got to be a way around it.
Well, why don't you go to DEP then and tell them to change the regulations?
So
Today was the first
do the
time I saw
regulations
it.
require that, Peter? Because when I met with them, it didn't seem like, I mean, it was, we used all the documentation available, but it wasn't necessarily limited. My concern with this is, it lists, it's a very generic listing for this permit. It doesn't even have the house number on it.
That's the old permit.
Right.
Yeah.
So do we have a new permit?
So does this mean
Yeah, we do.
that,
There's a new permit from
Okay.
when they put their system in.
Yeah, I hope so.
So the other thing that
What's the new
we've
permit
done
say?
before, and I could do, is go to
Required to
DEP,
be 2 bedrooms.
explain
The permit.
what has happened, and see what they would suggest. Sometimes,
I think that's probably a good idea.
that's,
Well, that's the process I was talking about then, yeah.
Yeah, let me.
Okay, so here's a new one. Look, upgrade, granted well offset of restriction must be placed on the deed for the property limiting the house to a 2-bedroom dwelling. Copy of the recording must be submitted. Now, and this has your signature on it, Ann's, Peter Casanera's, and Bill Cole's, and somebody I can't read.
Let me
Probably
see.
yours, Gino.
Yeah,
And that was based on the meeting in which Jim came and said that he had found an existing 2-bedroom permit for this house, this,
that number was the 3-bedroom, could I say
Which-
that? The 3-bedroom was up in the air.
which we accepted, just because we accepted it, Jim said he'd found it, it was good. We just saw the actual permit.
So I think Peter's got a point. Let's check with DEP on
Yeah,
this.
yes, I think would be a good idea.
And see if there's a rule that, I mean, recently was told we did something we couldn't do, so we'll check with DEP and make sure we don't
Right.
do that again, and see what the rule is on this. My last meeting with DEP, we brought up an issue where there was an old permit from the 50s, and they seem to put less, not a lot of credibility on that we still within our judgment. So why don't we check with DEP? I think that's a good suggestion, Peter.
And
Yeah, I think
just
that's
want-
probably the only avenue at this point in time. Explain to them that there was somewhat of a, not necessarily a misunderstanding, but for the information that was presented, there could be a workaround or something to.
I think so.
And I guess part of the question to me is this permit, which seems to be at the root of all this, for your house or one across the street or up the street or,
Right.
you know, so
Well,
I
I
mean,
have
we,
the permit for the farmhouse.
what's up?
I have the permit for the farmhouse.
So is that the one across the street? Is that the only one it could be confused with, or?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, so if we have evidence that this was it doesn't negate it, but it's,
have a street number on it?
White House.
What's the number of that house?
so this is farmhouse, and this has got a 4-bedroom system.
Well, there's 6
Do you guys have
bedrooms.
street numbers on that?
Well, there's a long history of street number confusion between 90 and 91. so-
Farmhouse, as I think Peter was saying, I'm not sure, the farmhouse has 2 units in it. 1 unit has 4 bedrooms, 1 unit has 2
Okay,
bedrooms.
but that's not your home.
No.
No, so
Okay.
that's a permit for the 4-bedroom part of the
Yeah, and
farmhouse.
so this was the year before this one.
Is there also a permit for
For
the
the 2-bedroom
2-bedroom
part?
part of the farmhouse?
Because they would need a septic system that handled 6 bedrooms altogether, 4 and 2.
Couldn't that be the permit?
That's probably
It
the
could
permit.
Well, this
So
says
this-
4-bedroom.
Well,
No, the one that's there.
I mean, this, well, it could be, again, we don't know, but I mean.
Well, that's the confusion. This 2-bedroom permit could be for the rental unit
2-bedroom
associated with the
part of it,
farmhouse.
exactly.
And then for everything we've done since then is based on erroneous permits,
That's the concern, right?
Let me put that.
you know. which-
Frankly,
Yeah.
that would be my bet at this point.
Well, I said we don't know.
No, I don't know, but
So,
A plus B,
so with confusion around this, and if, I'll contact DEP or Peter, you're welcome to, since you have more of a history on this. The question I would ask is, again, if this was a 3-bedroom system with all the constraints, you know, that we couldn't move the house and all that
Yeah, yeah.
stuff, would we approve a 3-bedroom system with these variances?
And I just want to say, as a final thing, we love this house. We're going to stay here for a long time. Whatever you decide is fine with us. Well, I shouldn't say whatever you say. Whatever you decide,
As long
we
as you don't evict us,
accept.
for example, but other than that,
We
whatever you
accept
decide
it.
is fine.
It was just after Jim Carr said, you should have that permit reviewed, then we felt like we
It was
should
after
do
that we actually
So-
got the copy from Jim Gareffi of this older permit, which, you know, as we've established, it's a little ambiguous what it applies to. But look, you guys, this is your job. We'll abide by the
So
Whatever you
what
say.
we want to do is, we want to give you guys a fair shake and consider this thoroughly, but also remain consistent with what we've done in other properties.
Absolutely.
There was
Absolutely.
something at the time, was like, they came out like, well, it really is the 3 bedrooms, but they can use it as a 3-bedroom. It was, so there was a lot of gray areas in that.
So can I ask a question on this?
Sure.
So it's got a deed restriction in 2 bedrooms.
Yep.
Realtors don't pay attention to that. Buyers don't pay
They
attention.
have to. They actually have to.
They
No,
have it in
that-
the past. We've had a few of them in front of
Well,
us.
so we would not.
They should, and many do, but we've
And-
had
and
quite a
we-
few who don't.
I'm just saying, we wouldn't do that because they're supposed to, the
Right.
realtor's supposed to note the 2-bedroom restriction. So when we sell it,
Yeah.
we will put on there, if it states that it has a 2-bedroom restriction. We kind of hope that that doesn't matter because it's actually a 3-bedroom house with a 3-bedroom septic and has a great view, and we've worked like dickens to bring it back up to.
Maybe you ought to just read them what Jim Gareffi.
Okay, I read part of it, but I'll read it all. The bedroom determination is based on the approved Board of Health permit for the sewage disposal system for the facility, Title V. The permit for this facility was for a 2-bedroom house installed in 1967. I don't know why it was permitted for 2 bedrooms, but it was. I made this fact abundantly clear when the current owners of the house during their purchase of the house. And you're not denying that. So, the assessor's records for the house show this is a 3-bedroom house. The assessors have their own methodology for determining the bedroom count of a facility. I don't believe that it includes consideration of the capacity of the septic system. It is for that reason that Title V directs boards to use a septic system permit for this site.
Good enough.
Right.
The question is this
Exactly
the
right.
accurate permit for that
That's
site?
right.
That's
Just-
where the ambiguity comes in this. In the
That's-
absence of being able to clearly determine that, I think we'll check with DEP, but I think we need to, again, use the logic we've been talking about. Would we approve this new construction with these variances?
Because frankly, it seems to me after this discussion, and certainly when I was reading these emails last night and this morning on this, and some of this, what was provided, is his second line is not actually true. Because he says, the permit for this facility was a 2-bedroom house installed in 1967. Well, based on this discussion, and based on all the other ambiguities, I don't think we can 100% say
Right.
that.
Well, it's not untrue, it's just not clear that it is
It's not
true.
Well, okay, let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So it's not 100% accurate.
So
I mean,
where
not
we have questionable data on what that permit is, which all of this determination is based on, let's check with DEP
Yep.
and see. Shelley, you know these records better than anybody. How much confidence do you have that that 1967 permit relates to this house?
They're actually fairly accurate.
But without any, I mean, the thing that's throwing me up is there's no house number.
Most of them don't have, a lot of these old ones, some of them, they just say a square lot on, Nagog Hill Road, and you kind of piece it together by what it is.
Okay.
I mean, I'll go back and I'll look at what he owned in 67 for properties, and I'll look and see
Okay.
what there are for
So
permits.
it
but-
seems to me, just from our discussion, like if there were a permit for the 2-bedroom part of the house at the intersection, right, there's a 4 and a 2-bedroom piece, and then he must have a 2-bedroom septic to support that somewhere. If we can find that, then it's kind of, well, all right, so then this is not that, and that's as close as we'll get.
And the final
If
part
we
of
can't,
I don't know why there'd be 2 permits for
There should
one
have been one
house.
permit.
There'd be 1 permit for
but
the
this permit has a
farmhouse.
4-bedroom septic, I thought they
Right,
said.
but if,
But there's another 2-bedroom building on it, right?
Yeah.
So that might have a separate system.
If it's got a
That's what I'm-
separate
that's what
system,
I'm
we have a
saying.
separate septic.
It was a separate building, which I think is a good segue into our next discussion, but,
All right, well, thanks for taking the time to discuss it.
okay, so
Appreciate it.
we'll check in and we'll get back to you and determine whether you have to come back here, but,
Okay.
we're happy to look into it.
All right, well, thank
For the
you.
realtors in the audience who gave me a dirty look when I bought my house, I had 3 different listings with 3
I
different
never
bedroom
did that.
numbers. It wasn't
I
you.
never did
But 3 different realtors had different bedroom counts.
Jeff, I may contact you, get some more information.
Okay.
if you need it.
Thanks.
So Peter, you'll take charge of
Yeah,
contacting
I
DEP.
think what we'll do is explain the situation as such as that, there was some, haziness, if you will, about having it be a 2 or 3-bedroom house at the time, but the system, according to the engineers, can handle 3 bedrooms, so that's.
Capacity with variances. And I do think it's worth mentioning, there's some question, I don't know how much, about whether the permit we've been pointing to is that house. Seem fair?
Yep, sounds fair.
All right, where are we now? Okay.
Thank you.
7:30, 2527 Dahlia Drive. Sherry?
If I may, good evening, Sherry Gould for the applicant. I have with me Matthew Field and Michael Field, M&M Realty Trust. In the back, I have Mr. and Mrs. Najarian, who are the prospective purchasers for 27.
Stephen Heidi.
Oh, okay, the Shays, sorry, I apologize. We're forging new ground here tonight, and it's been an interesting learning process. So first of all, you have the ability under Title V to grant a variance for a shared septic system. We have historically in Littleton have shared systems only for things like condominium associations and other big projects like that. This is going to be a little bit different tonight, and we've been working through it together with Town Council and with Jim Griffey from the Board of Health. So Jim has comments to you tonight, and the first of those comments is that this is a request for a variance. We need certified mail to the abutters 10 days in advance, so I'm submitting my proof of notice to the abutters for you. Okay. The second thing I'm going to show you is the plans. Matthew and Michael Field bought 2 existing houses down in the lake area on Dahlia Drive. They were, at the time, strangely enough, both numbered 27, but they existed on 2 separate building lots. One was a 10 by 100 lot, believe it or not, and the other was, no, it was 10 by 100. I have all of the documentation here. And the other one was 90 by 100. And believe it or not, there was a house squeezed in that 10-foot. So when he went to the Zoning Board of Appeals and through the Building Inspection Department, it was recommended that they would like to replace both houses, and it was allowed to have them replace both houses, and it was thought to be preferable to trying to squeeze another house on a 10 by 100 or upgrade the existing houses that were dilapidated. So what they did is they roughly split the lot 50-50 and put the septic system behind, as it shows on this plan, and they were going to share the septic system. And we started to pursue condominium form of ownership for these 2 houses on one lot, but it seemed like the only real thing that the condominium association would have to share would be the septic system. We looked at the Title V regulations for a shared system, and I personally believe that there's a better result to the board and to the public safety and everything for a shared system in a situation like this. And I base that on properties that we have, like at Arc Place and other places where there are condexes where 2 owners have a condominium association and one or the other may not be paying their condo dues. So the shared system regulations are a little more, I think, a little tighter and a little more, there's a little more financial assurance for this kind of thing. So Jim asked me to draft Jim Griffey asked me to draft the Title V covenant, and the scope of this is essentially, there is an easement for this shared septic system, and I'm going to walk you around the plan for a minute. The easement runs along the line in the back of the first house that says shared septic system easement, and then it comes down, let's say it's going to the, as you look at the plan, to the right, and then it comes down to the point at the corner of the house, a little further than the corner of the house, and then across that line where the S is circled in the middle, and then back up to the shared system line again, and then off to the end of the property. And what that encompasses is all of the leach bed, all of the tank, and the S, I think, is the...
It's a sewer structure.
Sewer structure, Jen, you probably know better than I what the S stands for. So, according to the Title V covenant, what we're supposed to do is grant cross easements for both properties to access the septic system, and I have drafted a covenant with the description of that system area, and we will record this plan with it. And then it says that we have gone before the local approving authority, and we've asked for the variance to do this. And the variance requirements are simply that you have to be satisfied that we have the documents in place, the financial assurance, and the notices to the abutters. It does not say that it's a Title V variance, nor does it have to go to DEP. And then we've copied exactly from, except for the names of the owners, We've copied exactly from the DEP appendix regulations that say what the grant of septic easement has to do. And believe it or not, it has to also grant to the town and to the DEP the access and easement to get onto the property to protect public health and safety if necessary. So here's the grant of septic easement all drafted. That's number 2. And then it says we have to provide for a homeowners association for governance and to tell the two homeowners how to deal with each other. And we've drafted a homeowners association document. Jim has looked at it and council has looked at it. Council and I spoke more than once on this document. We've gone back a couple of times on a redraft. Council says that he would not be able to comment to you formally unless requested by the Board of Health. He's not able to comment because I asked him or because Jim Griffey asked him. But verbally, he said to me, the document looks good to him, and he'll probably comment on it favorably, and that's that. Okay. That's the homeowners association. Now, I'm just going to draw your attention to the other area of Jim's memo that says the financial assurance mechanism. I will draw your attention to 2 areas of Jim's comment. He says, a proposed operation and maintenance plan for the shared system needs to be included. We have that both in the draft of the covenant that I handed you first, which is the Title V model, and then we have it in this document. It says, if you go to page 2, about 2 paragraphs up from where it says financial assurance mechanism, he says, the proposed operation and maintenance plan for this system would be to pump it and inspect it every 3 years. And that's in here, that it's an obligation of the homeowners to do that, and it's an obligation under the covenant that they do that. I think I've underlined it so you can see it in there. Or pumping the septic system at least once every 3 years and having a Title V inspection.
Where is it in this Title V?
In the
Covenant?
In the Title V covenant, it is, I just get the line. It's in there. It's inspection and pumping under obligations and easement on page 2. Okay? So that's his comment there. I'm sorry, was that a question?
No,
Okay. Okay. Number 2 is a description of the form of ownership which each component of the system serving more than one ownership, including without limitation easements, blah, blah, blah. That's all in the homeowners association document. And the description of the ownership will be the homeowners association between lots 25 and 27. And just for informational purposes.
Is that, just to save me time, is that basically point 2 is the whole document?
The
Is
whole
there a
doc-
specific?
The whole document
Okay.
is how they're going to own it vis-à-vis one another and how they're going to relate to one another. And just to save you time reading it, this happens to be, if you look at the plan, the smaller of the 2 houses is a 2-bedroom and the larger of the 2 houses is a 3-bedroom, and that's how the system was permitted. So they've agreed to share 60/40.
Okay, I was going to ask how it got to 64.
Yeah, they're going to share 60/40 the cost, but they're going to share 50/50 the decision-making. They're going, whatever is elective, whatever is mandatory, they have to do, and it says it in the document, but whatever's elective, they have 50/50.
What were those bedroom count again, Sherry? The
3 and 2.
3 and 2?
Yep.
And the last item he speaks of is the description of the financial assurance mechanism. Now, this is the paragraph that says financial assurance mechanism. It's in the DEP document under number 2, right after obligations and easement number 2, and it's in my document, the homeowner's document, with an underlined financial assurance mechanism. And what I would like to present to the board is the numbers to put in here. So these are the discussions we had. In a condominium association, they usually collect condominium fees plus 10%, and they build up this reserve over many, many years to make sure that there's a reserve in the budget for everything, with roofs or painting or siding or septic system.
In this case, it's only for septic.
Here, it's only for septic. So I went back and forth on the numbers, and I did a little of this talking with Jim and thinking about the homeowners and their costs. What we're going to do is create a passbook savings account. I'm going to put money in the passbook savings account.
That's good.
In escrow. Both homeowners are going to be named on the passbook savings account. Both will have access to it for repairs only. The town and the DEP will be named as beneficiaries on the passbook savings account. And the question is, at what rate we build it up. So the Fields have told me that the initial cost of the system was something a little under 16, and admittedly, that's exclusive of the retaining wall, but you're not going to have to do a retaining wall again. And so I thought, and Jim's comment says build it up over a 20-year period. So I thought, conservatively, it would make sense to kind of build it up to $10,000 sum over a 20-year period. I think that's because my feeling is hardly ever will the whole system go at once. You'll be replacing a D-box, or you'll be replacing a piece of the system or a bed, but not likely ever the whole system at once. And so I think for $20,000 or $16,000 to be sitting in this escrow account doing nothing is a little bit of overkill. So my suggestion was that we propose maybe start the balance with $500 on day one, contribute $300 annually, which will give us, for 5 years, $300 annually for 5 years, and then $500 annually after that. And that builds it up to about enough money to do your 3-day your pumping and inspection every 3rd year, and still have a cushion in there. And by year 20, to have it built up to about $10,000 or $12,000. Jim and I talked, given that, interest rates are low right now, but they might not always be low. Maybe costs of repair are going to go up, but...
So that would be my concern. I mean, you've probably seen Jim's comments. He doesn't think the amount's adequate or consistent with other towns. So a couple things. You generally assume for the worst in these things, not the best. And rates are going to go up, just through inflation. So it seems like we might want to go a little bit higher on that. I don't want to put any extra burden on the homeowners, but it seems a little low based on what you're telling me.
Thanks. So when Jim said it was low, I had in the document, what I had in the document was put in the sum for annual pumping and inspection, even though you're only going to do it every 3 years. So put in that amount per year plus a 10%, and that's what he said was low. When I met with him today, we both spoke about $500 a month being a reasonable amount.
Between the two.
500
$500 a year, sorry, $500 a year.
He almost does.
No, $500 a year
They almost
total,
left.
being a reasonable amount. When I went to the attorneys for one of the buyers anyway, she thought that was a little on the high side for the beginning. And so that's why I came here tonight with the proposal that maybe for the first 1 to 5 years, we give them a little break on the amount, but then we can accelerate it
I'm
later.
comfortable with that, especially with new homeowners and cost and all that sort of thing. I don't mind it being lower, and it's less likely to need repairs in the early years. The question is, what do we have after 15 years when we start getting repairs, and how do we compare that to what the cost might be in 15 or 20 years from now, which is going to be higher than it was now. So it cost you guys 16 to build this thing today.
And the cost of it.
We agree the retaining wall doesn't need to be part of that. It's going to be more.
It's going to be more, but again, Jim and I talked about
You
how,
charge more than you did 16, 20 years ago. So.
believe it or not, we lawyers have not had a big increase, but I'm being facetious.
I know.
But again, my comment is it realistic to think that the whole thing needs to be replaced in 20 years?
Could be.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said,
Okay.
usually you plan on the worst case scenario and you figure in inflation. Now, I'd probably be okay with replacement costs in 20 years, but and again, I think it's smart to keep it low in the beginning when people's finances aren't as strong, when they're new homeowners and that sort of thing, and when you're less likely to see it. But I agree with Jim that I think, 15 years down the line, we need a bigger nest egg for this.
So then the other comment is...
I don't know how much, that's something for discussion, but.
The other comment that you should be aware of is the agreement provides that both homeowners have to pay any shortfall, and if they don't, it becomes a lien on the property to the person that didn't pay it, and no property could be sold without making sure that the lien is paid.
That's a good contingency,
So,
but I'm
yeah.
That
not
was
sure
a
it
question I
substitutes.
had. What happens if it gets sold and the new people coming in
Right.
say, well, we don't like the rules and regulations, what happens.
So it's a lien on the property.
Okay.
And they have to, they risk having a lien on their property. And like anything, like a tax lien, the banks will see this as a impediment to their security of their loan, and they're not going to like that very much.
But the intention of this is that if something goes wrong, there's money in there and neither homeowner has a problem. So, okay, if we don't have adequate, 10 years from now, there's not adequate money, somebody doesn't have the money in there, the other guy has to pony up, they don't have the other money, you're short what you need.
Yep.
So that's, I understand what you're saying, that may be reality, may be what happens, but I think the intention is, again, worst-case scenario.
I have
Not the
a,
absolute worst-case scenario, but not the rosiest either.
and I have a question, I'm confused. Going with, so a $500 deposit and then 300 annual, that's total, so that's 150 per unit?
Well, it's 60/40, but just.
But it's a total,
argument's sake,
you're
yes,
right.
yes,
$300
yes,
annual.
yes, yes.
So, I did this very quickly, so it could be wrong. So tell me if it's right, but very quickly, that math comes to less than 10 grand over 20 years? Am I doing this wrong?
I have.
So we said 60,
I have not,
16,000, right?
7,500, 8,500. I have 9,500 in 15 years is what I get.
Okay, so then, right, okay.
So
But
then I
still,
did,
it's, so then just add another 5 years to that, and note that every 3 years, you're taking out,
Some kind of,
how much does it cost to do an inspection and a pump?
maybe 200-300.
350.
350, 400.
Okay, so over the course of those 6 or 7 times you're doing that,
Which has also gone up, by the way.
which is, this doesn't seem to be anywhere close to having to replace a system in 20 years.
So I'm not here to argue the amount. I'm really not here. Whatever you decide is the amount.
So I think
That's
what we'd
what
like
it
to
needs
see
to have
is
is a financial
adequate
assurance.
16,000 replacement in 20 years.
But
Yeah.
keep it in mind, anybody that has a septic system, whether it's shared or individually owned, if it goes,
They have to come
they
up with the money.
generally come up with the money.
Right.
To
But
replace
there's
it.
generally not another party in there that
That's right. Now
has
you've
shared
got it.
responsibility.
Now
That's
you've
why
got
these
an issue.
And
requirements
the
exist.
other thing that, for people coming in not knowing how to handle a septic system, what do folks do to give them
Enforce it.
some training to what to do? In other words, not throwing a bottle of bleach down the system or anything of that
We
nature.
provide at the closing the information that's given to us by the Board of Health with a certificate of compliance on maintenance of a system.
And it's a conventional,
Really-
I mean,
This is one
Jim-
you really want to make sure that everybody understands
Yeah.
how to maintain it.
It is in the homeowners association that no one will throw
there's no garbage disposal.
garbage disposal, no hookup of garbage disposals, and no one will throw anything down the septic system that isn't appropriate for septic systems. If someone has exact language, I can get that into the document, no problem.
Even like hand bacteria.
Yeah, I have no problem putting that in diapers, baby diapers and stuff. I have no problem with
You
that.
probably want to budget closer to about 700 for, if you're going to pump and do, it's a regular Title V inspection. So it's, I mean, it's 350 to 450 whoever you go to, and it's a 1,500 gallon tank, so it's another 280 bucks.
2,000. I think it's
2,000.
2,000.
It's 2,000 gallon tank.
That's going to be a
So
big
it's-
tank.
It's, probably closer to almost 700 every 3 years.
So I guess the point I'm making, if the idea is to get to replacement of the system in 20 years and account for pumping and inspection every 3 years, these numbers aren't
But not
Close.
But
not close.
the other part of this that I think is getting lost, there's two people, and you're looking at it negatively. It can be looked at positively, where two people can have the additional funds easier than the single homeowner.
Yeah, again,
It really
we have
can.
to consider, this is a worst-case
Yeah,
scenario
and- and
contingency.
No, I understand
10
that,
years
but-
down the line, 15
But I
years
understand
down
that
the
it'd be a lot
line,
easier for somebody to
And
come
it's-
up with 5 than it would for 10 if there's 2 of them.
Well,
It really would.
but 10, 15 years down the line, you have a different owner in one unit versus the other, and now, you've got questions in about I'm not paying that, are you paying it? So that's the whole purpose. I used to be a president of a homeowners association, okay? So we, by the way, had a lot bigger reserve, or we built up a lot bigger reserve for anything that happened. Now, this is a 100-house development, so we had concerns, right? So there was a lot more different. But we erred way on the side of caution on what we were charging for
And according to
association
Jim,
fees.
that's
because-
consistent for other communities, what they
Yeah.
do with this.
He said that was consistent, and in terms of, just speaking to the homeowners through the chair for a minute, it's true that it's easier to budget that monthly and have it in there than for the homeowners to get a shock by it 4 years down the road when there's a big replacement necessary. I agree with all that, and the homeowners, I think, need to be aware of that. The other thing I wanted to say is, it's the kind of thing where I think the homeowner could negotiate in the sale of their home that there's this money in this account that's to the benefit of this house, and you need to give me something for it on the sale of the home. So I
we
think
don't care
that's
about that.
doable. I understand that.
I'm sure they would, but that's.
But what we'd like to see is adequate money in that reserve,
Yeah.
20 years from now, as well as to pump it. And I think what you're hearing from us is there's not in what you're proposing.
So can I just say 16,000 build up over 20 years, and you would have no strenuous objection if we tried to backload it and let the front monies be a little bit less to help the new first-time
I'm okay
buyers
with
get
that.
into the
I don't
home?
think I mean, the highest
Yeah.
risk of failures in
Not-
the later
yeah.
years, and
Okay.
biggest burden on the homeowners when you first buy the house,
How
so.
was this originally permitted? Wasn't this a
was
single system?
Permitted as a single system with serving two structures on one lot.
But a single owner,
Wouldn't that have been a lot easier than to go to,
they went to sell the buildings to different people.
Well, now that I'm here and we've gone through this exercise and it's Littleton's first.
I know
I
it
think
is.
it's the second.
It's
No, we
probably,
had
I think it was on Ivy. There's one on
We had
Ivy.
one on the old Leahy property. Remember, John?
yeah.
They had a
Yep.
system at the house, but not at the garage. And they wanted to sell the garage portion of Lions.
Leahy?
Yeah.
No, but there was also one done on Ivy, too, a shared system for two homes.
When did that go in?
But
How
I
long
think
ago did that go, Shelley?
I designed it, so I know there's
Huh?
one there.
that's a while back,
6 to
but
8 Ivy.
but I think this is the first time you've operated under
Here's
the
what my
It's not the
regs.
comments are. One, I would strongly recommend that the documents be reviewed and approved by town council. You've got verbal, okay, we'd like to make sure that's reasonable. Receive the financial mechanism of the shared system approved in other communities and require a much more significant initial deposit, higher annual contributions to ensure an adequate amount of money is available to maintain and possibly replace the system. I think the proposed amount is inadequate and should be based on a cost to maintain and inspect and replace the system in 20 years. That we're discussing. Anybody have any strong feelings on numbers? We've got to cover, replacement in 20 years plus maintenance. So work out a schedule and run it by us and
Well, you never know, you might have sewerage in 20 years.
yeah.
So you don't know. It's
I wouldn't bet my paycheck on that one, but.
gonna come eventually.
The shared system document must also provision to include a Title V inspection every 3 years, which you say
It
is already
does,
in there.
yeah, it does.
So what Jim says, the only way to recommend broad approval of a shared system of the situation above is mentioned. So it seems like the shared system document, we'll have council look at that, we'll run everything by council, and why don't you come back to us as soon as you can with some revised schedule.
Wait.
So council and Jim, both, I met Jim at noon today, and I asked him to please confirm with Shelley, both agreed that it would be agreeable to them if you voted the variance subject to the approval of the documents by council.
So you have to make 2 motions. You first have to
Approval by council and approval of the
approval to
financial.
use council to review it and approval of the
And
variance.
subject to acceptable
Subject to whatever
financial-
conditions, yeah.
Does that work?
So it would be 800.
What?
800.
Well, we'll make sure that it's,
Which would allow, you can sign, I don't think the permit's here tonight, but once the conditions are met, Jim can release the permit.
Okay. So do we hear such a motion?
I'm not sure I understand. what-
No, well, come to me again,
I'd love to do it, but I'm not sure I understand.
We need a provision to let Shelley make motions. We get through a lot.
I think you'll get in trouble again.
So you need to make a motion first, whether you're going to approve the variance. And then
But
have your
contingent.
contingent upon and list your
Approval of
conditions.
council.
Well, approval of council is the second motion.
by the approval of the documents by council.
Approval of the variance for shared system contingent on that there be a schedule to have 16,000 in the account after 20 years and meet I'd just reference Jim's conditions in his memo of this, and then I can just copy that. And then your second motion is that council approves that all the documents are prepared properly.
If the council doesn't approve the 16,000, they say maybe it's not much, then we have to figure it out, how to raise it.
Well, town council can't say anything about the amount. The board
that's-
decides the amount.
Realities.
You got that, John?
Contingent on,
Two motions.
so it's.
One is approval of the documents by town council.
Yep.
One was to approve the variance.
Yes.
That's a Title V variance, too.
You can make this motion too, Peter.
Yeah, I'm just jotting it down.
My attention span is too short for that.
I think it's a title, it's, pardon
We
me.
need to do these meetings in the morning.
I know, I know. It's, pardon me, but it's a Title V variance for a shared system under 15 CMR 290 et sec, ETSEQ, which means all of the things that we talked about tonight are contained within it. Subject to approval of the homeowners, subject to approval of the covenant and homeowners association documents by town council. And subject to the financial assurance provision, providing for a $16,000 replacement cost and the triannual pumping and inspection costs over a 20-year period.
So isn't it just one motion with two contingencies?
No, because the other motion has to be to request
Town council.
town council to,
To approve, review and approve
Review
the
and
covenant
approve.
and the HOA.
right.
Okay. I'll give it a shot. Walk me through it, but I'll give it a shot. All right, so I'd like to make an motion. First, approval of the covenant and the HOA contingent on review and approval by town council.
Should give the lot numbers, too.
25-27 Dahlia.
On lots numbers 25 and 27 Dahlia Drive. Second, I'd like to make a motion to approve the four lots 25, 27 Dahlia Drive, a Title V variance of 315-290 for a shared septic system that is contingent on finalizing the shared payment or shared costs such that at the end of 20 years, there is $16,000 in that account. At the end of that 20 years, that would cover basically at this point, a replacement system, but also take into account a triannual maintenance plan of pumping and inspection.
Perfect.
Well.
Perfect, right o'clock at night.
Yeah, as good as it gets.
Can we have Shelley read that back? Yeah.
Make sure I can say it again.
I'll make sure we got everything in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't have it word for word because I re-listened to the tape, but I have a motion by John to grant a shared septic system variant contingent on the covenant and homeowners association documents for 25 and 27 Dahlias, subject to the financial assurance provision of $16,000 replacement cost, triannual pumping and inspection cost over a 20-year period. Also a motion to allow the use
Well,
of...
hold on there, I'll second that
Okay.
first motion.
Okay.
And then a motion to allow the town council approval of the documents stated in the motion above.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion?
And the pump is gonna be every 3 years, right? That's in it.
Yeah.
That's in the first one.
That's in the document.
Yep.
So, and the money covers both replacement of the system as well as
The maintenance.
maintenance as well. So, any further discussion? Okay, motion one, do we have, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? No, unanimous. On motion two, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No one? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Congratulations, congratulations. Congratulations to that.
Has to be another week.
Okay, we have 39 Washington Street. I don't believe we're hearing that one because Jim didn't get the doc. Is anybody here for 39 Washington? All right. Well, come on up, but I think the motion, go find my notes
We're
here.
butters. This is our third time that we haven't been notified, and
Sorry.
then we're told that we can come when we call to ask about it, but we haven't been notified ahead of any of these meetings, and it's the third time it's been posted.
Well, it was scheduled, and what happened was Jim said, I can't offer a recommendation for this request as this review plans for the site on Thursday, and I had a chance to review them. Do you have concerns, or you just had questions, or? We don't have the plan, so it's really, I mean, I'd be happy to take the concerns now, but it's out of
Well,
context.
We just appreciate being notified for the next meeting. if
There has
possible.
been no registered mail.
Okay, it was on the agenda, unfortunately, they didn't get the plan
I sent an
to.
email with the agenda yesterday, I believe,
Yeah.
so.
And I just got this today. that-
Well, we get Jim's notes today,
Our
the day
argument
of.
is not with you.
Yeah.
We understand, but I'm apologizing, but also explaining, so.
But what did they say? They didn't get, you didn't get
We
registered
didn't get any
mail?
No
notice.
No notice.
The only reason we knew about this was because we contacted the office directly.
Okay, so Shelley, can we reach out to the folks on this one and make sure, do we have the registered mail receipts?
No, because I wasn't here at the last meeting.
Okay, so can we reach out and make sure that that's been sent out before we reschedule this, and that Jim gets to review it?
And do you have any idea of when this would be rescheduled for?
Well, I mean, it's kind of up to them. They need to put out those registered mail notices, and Jim needs, and we need to get a plan to Jim. So it should be the next meeting if they act quickly, but if they sit on it, it won't happen.
And when would the next meeting be?
It's the second Tuesday of July, which would be,
Second and
The
fourth
12th.
Tuesdays,
so it's either the 12th or 2 weeks after that.
assuming they get everything in time.
Right.
So I'm sorry I had to wait through this, but you did learn about shared septic systems more than you ever wanted to know, so, but I do apologize.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thanks.
Did Jonathan come to the last meeting?
Yeah, he was here, wasn't he? Yeah,
Yeah.
we had a review of one of his systems.
I'll let Sherry and her clients know that we're ready to, yeah, I think we're ready to go.
I think you went to talk to them.
Oh, we can talk about, they're on the agenda, so we're gonna
Right.
start.
Yep.
That was quick. They didn't have it, so come on up.
You call this already?
Yep.
Okay.
So where we last left off, we had concerns with neighbors. You guys had agreed to shut the operation down. We had asked for a plan. It was lacking somewhat in detail, and basically we were looking for more detailed plan and I think an earlier closure date. And I think you were going to come back and revise that plan.
So we did both, and I just want to report to the neighbors. I've been on site 2 or 3 times now because I wanted to be sensitive to what your concerns are. I think, was it you I called to 3 Colonial? Were you 3 Colonial?
Yeah, to
To
get the
get
surveyor.
the surveyor on site. So they have been moving the windrows since our last meeting, so for 2 solid weeks,
Yeah, they're all
to get them out of the 250-foot buffer. And it looks like we have a little more movement to do, but they got an awful lot more accomplished than I thought would happen in this short time. Because as you recall, we said it would be more like August before we had this firmly under control. So the windrows are the 4 parallel dark lines there. If you can see, they're almost out of the I'm sorry. Can I send one back to you? They're almost out of the 250-foot radius of all the wells. There's a little bit more to move, I think nearest to 3 Colonial and nearest to your own well. The 9 Colonial is all taken care of.
Yeah, question, the existing well on 3, isn't that in the back of the house?
No, it's,
Is it in the front?
yeah, right next to the front stairs.
I guess I'm thinking of the next one. Let's take it over. Okay.
Yeah, facing behind the house.
Sorry, Sherry.
That's okay. Vinnie also reported to me, Vinnie Mueller also reported to me that his schedule presented before for getting those 4 compost piles completely turned over would be August, did you say 15th or the end of August? And then having them out of there by November 30, December 1 of this year. You were upset that I thought he had told me next year of August. So hopefully October, but just to be on the safe side, end of November, early December, they'll be out of there
I
completely.
personally think December 1st is reasonable.
Those, okay.
Does that
those
include the
4
berm?
No, let's talk about the berm, but let's talk about the other things on the DEP letter, because the berm is a little more difficult as far as I
So the
can tell.
DEP stuff is not necessarily our issue.
Right.
So all that vector control plan, the odor control plan is relevant, you can bring it up. What I think our main concern is, what are the activities going to be between now and December 1st? And now we have a December 1st deadline that everything's going to be there. They're going to be out.
Yep, the 4 compost piles. when you
Now, we
say
may want to go
everything.
through the other things for the sake of the neighbors, but those are really DEP issues relative to their permit. So if you want to talk about the odor control and the vector control and that stuff, that's great. The burn is the bigger issue, and frankly, the burn's not ours, it's DEP, but they've
So-
already made a ruling on that, so.
So I want to talk to DEP about the berm issue, because there has been a difference of opinion, and this matter came before this board as a nuisance, as an active nuisance, and not under the DEP permit for composting so much as it was an active nuisance. We have, as far as I can see, abated that nuisance almost completely, and a plan for abating it completely by
You
December 1st.
haven't abated it completely, we continue to get odor reports, so the nuisance still exists.
Okay, on the mulch piles.
On the mulch
Relative
pile.
to the berm is not emanating any odors. If it is, we'll deal with that as a nuisance,
So
but
what I will
until
tell you is the
then,
berm, from our perspective, is not a nuisance, it's not within our authority.
So-
What is within our authority is to clarify the history of what happened with that berm, and frankly, you guys haven't been really honest about that. And we've got documentation from Jim, we've got documentation from board minutes, that that was in fact compost, it was part of an order to you guys on this. We provided that with DEP. We can discuss it, but it's really not our issue. We've given our information to DEP, you've given your information to DEP, they made a ruling, you talk them out of it, you talk them out of it, I'm sure the neighbors will say something, but the berm itself is not a nuisance.
so we want to
So-
go to DEP and further identify what part of the berm needs to be moved, and whether DEP will consider revisiting the issue of the berm, because when I was there, and I'm not challenging you, but I'm saying that berm is not an active nuisance right now under your jurisdiction.
So we agree with that.
When I was there, the berm, for all appearances from his side, looks to be dirt and wood chips. And if there was compost in there, I'd like to get that tested. I'd like to determine
Well, I would
where
suggest
it
you also
goes.
look at the Jim's email to DEP,
Yeah.
my email to
Yeah.
DEP, and minutes of previous board meetings when the berm was discussed.
Which
this
we will,
board.
which we will do
Which
with
we've shared with
DEP.
DEP,
Yeah,
which I think weighed heavily, as well as Mr. Mueller's statement, when I was there with DEP, that he harvested a good section of that berm.
Which we'll do with DEP,
So,
no problem.
From our perspective, the berm is not part of the nuisance, it's not within our jurisdiction. We do have a responsibility to provide accurate information to DEP, which we've done. So that's between you and DEP, and depending where DEP falls on this, perhaps the neighbors.
That's fine,
So,
that's fine. So we're just down to, as I show on that plan, a couple of pieces of the mulch windrows are still within the 250 mark, and they've got to be moved out.
They may have finished today.
They may have finished it today.
Yeah, that's all
It was
moved.
intended to
It's all
finish it.
moved.
What happened was,
so you've moved outside the 250 feet,
yeah,
which
what
is
happened is they
DEP's
moved
issue
it
as
as
well.
far as they,
Our main
away.
issue is what activities are going to take place between now and December 1st. The limitations on the days, you previously told us you wouldn't work on Saturday, but there's been at least 3 occasions when we have. I know you stopped them, but it still happened. And generally a description of the activities.
I need to clarify on the Saturdays, as I understand it, he still has a woodlot operation, and he still has a loam sifting operation, and that creates some noise, and that has been going on. They're, as far as I
And
know...
agreed, those aren't covered by the Saturdays, but what Richard himself has told me is he
Yeah, no
said to
more
stop
screening.
Vinnie's workers from working on Saturday on this.
Screener.
So we're not being confused with the other activities,
Okay.
which aren't part of this action, and I'll clarify for the record that neither the wood operation nor the loam operation are part of this discussion or this board's action.
Fine.
But Richard himself has told me that Vinnie's men were working on Saturdays and he had to stop them. So we don't want to see that happen again.
Agreed. You're not going to work on Saturday.
No work being done on any of the composting on Saturdays or any of the leaves.
So it could be his trucks are there because his trucks do the other operations as well, but he's not going to do any composting.
But Richard
on
himself
Saturday.
has told me he's been working on the compost. So if we're just a neighbor saying there was
No,
a
just
truck in
a-
there, I'd take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah, they might.
But you told me
haul it out.
you had them stop.
Well, there was a miscommunication, Brad, and I told the loader operator, you can't be working here Saturday morning, and he shut right down.
Okay, but
There
they
has
were
been
working
a-
Saturday morning.
Yeah,
I think,
but I
Vinny,
stopped,
you need to
yeah.
follow through on this. Richard's done his part. But Richard's told me specifically, he told Vinny's guys to stop working. He didn't tell them
Well,
to
it
stop
was-
working on the wood or
it was-
the loam. He told them to stop working on the compost. So the point being, no more compost work on Saturdays.
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay?
we're not doing
Everybody
that.
agrees to that, right?
You agree to that?
I had suggested that last summer.
What do you mean by, they can't take a load out?
No, I mean, that was part of the problem, Richard, Peter was, or problem, the situation more than the problem, was that there are odors when you disturb the piles.
Okay.
People are more likely to be home on Saturday than they are during a weekday,
So you
and
don't
part
want
of,
any touching of the compost piles?
on Saturdays or Sundays. And they
Saturday,
had
yeah.
previously, and Richard offered that.
Yeah, I
So-
offered that last year.
All right.
I just want to make sure we're clear and we all understand. So we're not doing anything with any of the compost on Saturdays, but we are allowed to come in to take out a load of loam, correct?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, all right.
As long as it's loam. The loam operation, the wood cutting is not part of this
Yeah.
discussion, or the DEP, or the board. Board's not focused at all on that. It's just the compost.
I was running a wood splitter last Saturday, I believe, so if there was any noise, that was me, until I can find a better job, I'm stuck.
We're dealing with the odor from the compost. We don't even need to discuss at this point, and hopefully never, your loam or your wood cutting. And I think that, even the neighbors have told me that doesn't bother them.
I'm trying to get a
Hopefully it
job
won't be
with
the
Dave
next thing
Badger, but he
otherwise.
won't hire me,
So we're just talking composting. Vinny, if you come in and want to chop wood, that's fine, or take out loam or whatever, that's fine. But the main point being is that we get a lot of folks home on Saturday. When you disturb the compost piles, it tends to release odors, and that contributes to the nuisance.
So I trust that we're moving forward to your satisfaction, that we're all on the same page, and that the timetables are reasonable now.
Any discussion? I think I think generally, my understanding of most compost operations, you get rid of almost everything by the time you bring new stuff in on the fall. So you normally have most of it done by October. I think giving yourself a couple months or a month and a half just in case is fine. That's reasonable in my, anybody else? Sound unreasonable to anybody?
So we,
Well, you got a lot of the DEP stuff, which we're not getting into that.
We don't need to get into DEP. That's DEP's
But,
going to
I'm just curious, if you're gonna start moving it out, how fast can you move it out?
We said by August.
Well, it's not even ready yet.
Yeah, they still need
That's the
to
problem.
compost, they're still active, and to get rid of it, I think we basically agree that there's some composting that needs to continue through this, and that's it. Now, the only contingency, if DEP doesn't come back, I'm assuming right now that December 1st includes the berm. Because right now, DEP's order says that berm's part of the compost and needs to be considered. So that December 1st deadline, until DEP says otherwise, this board is assuming includes that berm. Because I saw the letter from their attorney, and she basically said they're requiring you to move it to 250 feet as part of the compost operation.
I would like you to consider, first of all, I don't think they can get the berm out of there by December 1st. That
And you need
wasn't
to
part of
revise
what
your
we
date, because what we need to operate under is
But-
not what you would like things to be, but what DEP,
No,
at least
but-
at this point in time,
but I-
says things
But
are.
I would like you to consider the problem here. You wrote a letter to Mike Penny. Mike Penny gave a communication to DEP.
Mike Penny is with DEP.
I'm sorry, to the attorney for DEP. I gave a request for instruction from the attorney for DEP, and if I put all the three letters side by side, they're conflicting. So I need to go back to DEP and the attorney and resolve it. We have a game of the kids' game
So
of
what-
buzz going
so
on
no,
here.
what we have is, we have board minutes from this board that we provided with them, where we've documented talking about the berm and what the purpose are.
He needs.
Let me finish.
Yeah.
We have my understanding of the situation that we've sent to DEP, and we have Jim Gareffi's understanding of the situation that we sent to DEP, and we have your letter, which is relaying what Mr. Mula told you. DEP has seen that, all that information, at this point has come up with a determination that this is in fact part of the composting operation. So, until DEP determines otherwise, what I'm telling you is, I think your closure plan, what I'm telling you is your closure plan needs to include the berm. Now, if DEP comes back and changes their mind, that's fine. But as you saw the letter from Ann, DEP considers that berm to be part of this compost operation.
I'm hearing everything you're saying. But I don't agree with you because Mr. Mueller has to go back to DEP and his technical assistance people to clarify the berm, but the berm isn't a nuisance, so it's not your jurisdiction. So he will go back to DEP about the berm, and whatever DEP decides about the berm removal, we're prepared to do.
DEP is already determined on that. Now, you may change their mind, but we
We
have
may
an email
change
from
their
him.
mind.
But we have a determination from DEP.
But
So
she didn't
can
say
I-
for you to
No.
enforce it, she'll enforce it.
So,
DEP will enforce it.
But let me clarify something here. If there is composting material in the berm, which the DEP says there is, so I'm just saying, let's say that continues on, then in fact it is, or can be considered a nuisance, and therefore it is under the jurisdiction of this board.
And you yourself have said if they
Correct.
disturb that berm, it's going to create odors.
If there's
said
composting,
it
if
yourself.
there's
That's what I said. That's what I
composting,
said.
we don't know for a fact that there's composting
No,
material in the
well, so,
berm,
but-
except for verbiage.
But you're not
We're trying to
answering
get
my
it
question.
tested.
I said, so, the DEP, based on my reading on this, says that there is. Based on board minutes, there is, okay? Right? And it's been disturbed as part of this operation. So if in fact, and then you are unable to change the DEP's mind, if in fact that holds, then it is considered part of the composting operation, and therefore, it can be considered a nuisance, and then under the jurisdiction of this board. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And in
That's
fact,
a simple-
Sherry, at the last meeting, you warned us that if we disturb the berm, it would create more odors. So in fact, that berm is part of the
Brad,
nuisance.
I'm not an engineer. What I said was, I'm worried if the berm gets disturbed, it'll be a problem. I want the berm tested to see if it's compost.
You
If
specifically
compost
said
was
odors.
put, if it creates odors, it's
Right,
a
right.
nuisance, and I agree that we would have to do something. If it's not creating odors, it's not leaching into the ground, and it's not any
So where we stand
unsafe
now is
harm.
both this board and DEP considered that berm to be made of compost. Until such time
So
as you
we wanna
convince
go through
DEP
that.
otherwise, we would like the berm, we will require the berm to be part of your closure plan. Now, you convince DEP otherwise, and we can revise that. But I'm going with what DEP has determined. Now, if they change their mind, we'll follow whatever DEP says. But right now, we have a determination from DEP that declares that berm compost, said it has to be moved away from 250 feet, and as it's compost and doesn't have to be within 250 feet, I'm not inclined to consider it outside the realm of a nuisance. You get them to decide otherwise, and I'll do so. But until then, that's part of the deal here. And if you're not willing to give us a date, we'll give you one.
I think that demand has to come from the whole board, not just you, Brad.
I know, but I'm telling you what I think this needs to be, Peter.
Brad, I also
One
think.
thing is telling us what you think, but it's also, when you keep saying the board requires this, the board.
All right, well, let's
requires
have some
that.
discussion then.
And I don't think you're wrong, I don't think you're out of place. It's just that some of the issues that Sherry brings up, we might want to talk about.
I agree. So let's bring it up for discussion. I'll let other folks talk.
And not knowing, like I say, I've been out of it for a year, so you guys have been in on it. But again, the whole business of the berm and what it consists of, I think it makes common sense for if someone's gonna test it, right? They're gonna test
Yeah,
it.
she said it many times. Let's see what happens.
Well, see, the background on this is, Peter, whether you're composting wood chips, which is what you're claiming, sawdust and things from there, or this, I'm not sure testing determines it's compost. What we have is a very clear record in minutes of this board and the recollections of Jim Gareffi and others that that berm was put there specifically consisting largely of
I
compost.
think they
and
were
it's
asked
part of
by
it.
us, weren't they?
They were.
Privacy.
And part of it was to put in, it was to encapsulate grass clippings and other things that were mitigating the odors, and the berm was created out of compost at that time to do that. And that's pretty clearly reflected in the minutes of this board. Jim has said it. It's my understanding from what others have told me, including you.
No, Brad, it's the berm, if you go out there and look at it, it's mostly the tailings from the screener. It's
No,
rocks
it's
and
not.
sticks.
I've
No.
walked on that berm.
Yeah, I know.
I've walked on it. I was there with you, and you threw some screenings, and actually we had a complaint from a neighbor who said they're adding stuff to the berm, and we said, no, he's just adding some of the tailings from
It's
the
all
wood. out
rocks,
there.
though, if you look at it. You
But
know, you
I've
can
dug
say
into
one
that
thing.
because we actually had, I mean, there's plastic sticking out of parts of it from when you had plastic coming with your compost. There's really not a lot of question as to whether that's compost. Now, you convince DEP otherwise, but, John, I've been on there, I've walked the berm. What do you think, Gino?
Well,
Have you reviewed the board minutes and such?
Yeah, but I'm saying, I'd like to take her word for it. She says they're gonna test it. Let's see what happens.
Well,
What
we want to take a word for it now, or do you say we can revise this once the testing's
We
been done?
revise it when it's.
We'll come back to you with a berm plan. What I'd like to do is have Vinnie Mueller contact DEP, have them, have them come out to the site. You told me they would come out to the site, and let them make a determination about the berm. Whatever they say is under his
So
compost
can the Board of Health go
license.
along in that site
Sure.
visit? So we'll get an
I
invite on
think
that?
that's a good idea. And then whatever they say, because
All
it's
right.
their jurisdiction.
So is the board comfortable with a separate plan for the existing windrows, and then, should DEP uphold their decision that this is in fact compost, amend or do a separate plan for the
Yeah, I'd be
berms?
agreeable to that.
And by the way, if it has to be moved, I think we have to create a new plan for odor control and everything else, because I don't know what's going to happen if it is compost and it gets turned over.
Well, the odor control plan that DEP has asked for includes the burn, because DEP's made it very clear that they consider the burn to be part of the compost. So whatever plan you gave them should include the burn.
We're going to have them come out and identify
That's okay.
what they want to do with the
clarify
berm
it and change it,
specifically.
But I saw the DEP memo, and it's very clear that they consider that part of the berm, and that's why they're making you move it outside of the 250 foot.
I just want them to meet on site.
That's fine.
And get that technical
But don't tell me
assistance
it's
to do
not
what's
clear
right.
at this point. You'd like to change what DEP's determination is. That's fine, and if they change it, we'll go with it. But they made a determination. They could change it, and we'll go with that.
Okay.
But your odor control plan should right now cover that berm.
He's working on that.
So, you had a comment.
Yeah, I'd like to read directly from the meeting minutes for those who haven't read it. This is from November 26, 2013, when we started talking about this.
Make sure you mention about how you
Richard
have
stated
asthma, though.
that he has,
That's not really relevant, Richard.
No.
So, please go ahead.
Richard stated that he has moved the pile to create a berm. Like, I don't know how you get more black and white than that. It's straightforward. This is in the meeting minutes, and based on my understanding of meeting minutes, is they have to be approved by the board before they're published on the website and made public to everyone on the internet. So it's an insult to all of us sitting here, and we've been working on this for 3 years, to insinuate that that berm material is not compost when it says it in black and white, and I've been living this for 3 years. It's an insult to me, and it's disgusting that you don't think moving that berm is important, because it's within 250 feet of my well, right? So unless you guys are gonna start shipping Poland Springs into my house so I can shower and stuff like that, you've been 3 years out of regulation, 3 years, and putting stuff in my drinking well. It's time to move it. It's black and white, and based on what I've seen, the DEP's made a decision, so move it 250 feet from my well. Move it. It's my drinking well. And Richard, don't make fun of me because I have asthma or allergies.
Well, I'm not making fun of you, but you're going on about asthma, but you're smoking cigarettes.
Richard,
And when you
that's-
go in
Wait,
your
I
yard,
don't
you
smoke
throw,
cigarettes.
you throw
Hold up.
stuff in my yard.
That's enough.
I
This
know.
isn't constructive. We're not
I
talking
know.
about people's health effects.
I'm not.
We're talking about the berm. Let's
Stating
leave it to that, okay? So I think what we have agreement on the board is we have a plan for the existing windrows. We will, by the meeting once the DEP visit. Have you scheduled that yet?
I would say we need a month, because I don't know when they're scheduled. Did you talk to them today?
No, a month for what?
The next meeting here.
I have a call in the Sumner Martinson.
Sumner Martinson doesn't work there anymore. He's retired. So you're not going to get a call back from Sumner. You want to call Mike Penny.
I have a call in the Sumner Martinson for technical assistance. I know he's retired. I called his personal cell. He'll call me back. He's called me back since he has been retired. And he said to me, I ever needed assistance, feel free to call him.
Okay.
Okay?
We don't need assistance. We need DEP to make a second
I
review.
don't know why you would
I've also
contact him.
called Bruce Fulford from the technical assistance. He's a consultant through Mass DEP. I've scheduled a meeting with him. Tomorrow, there's an environmental company coming out to retest the berm. And I'd like a copy of the minutes that you were referring to.
They're on the webpage, or you can file a request with Shelley.
I'll file a request. Because based on what I just heard, I didn't hear anything about compost in the berm.
Well, when they said they moved the pile, I think it was basically.
Well, that's not
inferred.
black and white, move the pile. The pile that was moved was the tail.
Hold off on that till you
Anyway.
see the minutes.
We'll clarify the
We're
minutes, you
asking
can
if
see a
you can
copy.
get a meeting with DEP
Right.
on the site with this board invited sometime within the next month. Do you
Okay.
think you can manage that?
Absolutely.
All right, so what we have for tonight is the windrows, absent the burn at this point, and we have a plan to basically move those. What are the provisions of this plan? Everything out by December 1.
Yep. The
What else?
windrows,
No work on Saturdays.
right?
What else?
I'm not gonna bring in more leaves. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't ask for more than that to stop.
And then you
what
want
I'm
a
doing, I
month
mean.
before we come back for the burn issue?
Well, we have to meet with DEP, and
Okay.
to think we're going to get them in 2 weeks with
That's
July
fine.
4th is
So I'm okay with a month on the burn.
Decision's made.
The
You can
decision's
try
made.
in a month to change their mind, but the decision's made.
Excuse me, yeah,
Excuse me, Gino.
excuse me.
Gino,
excuse me.
we
Do you wanna
we
live
let
in
a
my
lot of people
house?
speak. So, anyway, we will deal with the berm, one way or the other. Now, if DEP decides it's not, they already have, but within a month, next month, 2 meetings from now, we're gonna have a decision on the berm. What I would ask you to think about is what's your drop date to get rid of the berm? Because I don't think DEP is gonna change their mind, because the evidence doesn't support it. Now, you can try, and we'll even give you a month, but quite honestly, I don't think you're being honest with this board.
I am, yeah, no, you can't say that to me, it's not fair, you know what I mean?
It is.
I'm not gonna
I've
let
seen
put
you, I've
words in
seen
my
Vinnie
mouth.
harvest part of that burn, I've seen the burn, I've seen the records, I had the discussion with you guys, so we'll give you the benefit of the doubt, but I'll be honest, and I'm speaking for me, not the rest of the board, I don't think you're being honest with us.
I am, sir, and I mean, you can say what you'd like, but that's
So,
up to you.
Vinnie?
Is this all being recorded?
Yep.
Okay. We were out at the site with Mike Penny, Jim Gareffi, yourself, Richard, me. Never did I say I was harvesting compost.
No, you told us you
Can I
weren't.
finish without being interrupted, please? Never did I say I was harvesting compost from that berm. I said I was harvesting soil from that berm, and there still is topsoil in that berm. That's what I'm harvesting from. That's what
What you
that's
told
what my
us.
son accidentally harvested from the last 75 to 80 feet of the berm. Never did I say I took compost from that berm.
Well, you're putting in with compost. What you told us was that you were scraping off.
You're putting words in my mouth.
No, I was there, I'm telling you what I remember you saying.
I was there too.
Right, so I'm telling you what I remember.
Speak the truth.
And I am telling you the truth.
No, you're not.
No,
Yes,
you're
I am.
not,
No, you're
Brad.
not. You're
I was there.
grandstanding.
You
You're
told
not
us you
telling the
scraped a
truth.
little bit off, half the burn was gone, Jim was there, Mike Penny remembered it that way. So you can look out and look aghast, but that's the way I remember it. So we will deal with it, so tonight what we have is the remaining windrows. 2 meetings from now, we will deal with the burn and whatever DEP determines. I don't think composting will be very convincing, but that's DEP, testing will be convincing, but that's DEP's. Do we agree?
I think you said 2 weeks from tonight, you meant?
Two meetings.
2 meetings from tonight, okay.
So,
Yep.
so the question is, are we comfortable to simply word that this is going to happen? Do we need an order? Do we want to document this somehow?
Well, I think it's part of the minutes of the meeting. It's going to be, documented. What would an order do?
Well, it's been documented that they weren't going to work on Saturdays, and they did.
Right, it's been.
It's been documented they were going to bring in the activity plan,
But
which
you
we
haven't
never
depended
saw.
upon them doing it. What do you think happens if you put an order out? How do you enforce it? You have no enforcement powers until you get,
Actually, we do, because it's in state law under 111, and as well as in the DEP regulations in 310, whatever it is. So we actually do, under state law, have
Accusations that
enforcement
We worked
powers.
on a Saturday. We did work on a Saturday, but we didn't work on compost. We gotta get that straight.
He told me to my
ridiculous.
face that
Richard,
you guys
we did not. We
No.
did not.
You weren't there.
I didn't tell you they work on compost, it was turning the screen or it made a noise, Brad.
Richard.
You
Not
didn't.
since our last
No.
mean.
No, I didn't say
Not
that,
since our
Brad.
last
Well, it doesn't matter
meeting.
what's
You
the
can't
last
tell me
meeting,
I
the
said
last
that,
day.
sir, when you can't put words in my mouth.
Then what did you tell us
Honestly.
people to
Well,
leave?
we're talking about the
Because they were
last
running a
meeting.
screener that made
When I
noise,
got involved,
Brad.
we
You know what I
promised
mean?
there'd be no Saturday
Makes
work,
a
and they
noise that
have
walks around. Yes, it is, sir.
No, it isn't.
They
sir.
acknowledged way before that.
All right.
I'm not gonna
So,
argue.
what an order gives us, if we order them to do this, is we actually do have enforcement powers. There's fines associated with, there's court things. It's basically our state authority under both the DEP regulations as well as Mass General Law, Chapter 111.
That's right. In the year I've been on the board, there have been multiple requests for information or for actions that have not happened, which is part of the concerns, or actually probably at this point, all the concern by the abutters to that. So we have no way previously of holding anybody's feet to the fire. And the only way to do that is an order that provides enforcement and fines if they don't comply with the order. We can't take them at their word anymore. We can't.
That's not accurate. You asked
It is
us,
very accurate.
you asked us to
Sharon,
move the
there's
windrows,
nothing I would
they're
have
moved.
said that I believe today. So you can't tell me what I can and cannot do.
No, you asked us to move the windrows, they're moved. You asked us to shut down, we're shutting down. You asked us to send a plan in, he sent you a plan, you didn't like it. Nobody gave him the parameters of the plan, he gave you a plan on the date he promised it. They've done everything they've said they were gonna do since I started here, they haven't worked on Saturdays since I got involved.
That was
Those
less than a month.
three meetings, the meeting before and the meeting before that.
And
They've done
actually,
everything they've said.
there hasn't been work on Saturday that I know of from the last meeting, but there was between the previous two meetings. There was.
On the compost?
Yes.
Yes. So
Not
there
on
was.
compost, they're not turning the leaves up, they're doing that. You don't understand exactly, you hear a machine start up and you think compost.
No, I didn't hear the
compost.
machine, I heard what you told me, Richard.
No, you can't tell me
You
that,
told
put
you
words
told
in my
these guys
mouth,
to
Brad.
leave. I'm not putting words in your mouth.
We're-
I called you,
we're
I said,
not being
Richard,
I actually
disagreeable.
talked to the
We're
I'm
neighbors
being told that
behind
they're
me.
still working. He goes,
They
yeah, that was a
stopped.
mistake, I told them to stop.
Yeah.
Now,
Not
if they were
working
working
on
on your loam operation, it wasn't a mistake. You could work on that on Saturday, but when
No,
you
they
said
were
that was a
working,
mistake.
they were turning loam for a short period and made some noise, and I said, it's a nice, peaceful Saturday, you can't be out on Saturday,
That certainly wasn't how you related to me, but
When-
we can
No.
both repeat, we made our points.
When I
No, I
came in
understand.
here as counsel, he asked me to defend his position. I didn't do that. From day one, I said, I walked him in the hall, I said to all of you, you shouldn't have to live that way, we're shutting it down. It has been exactly 4 weeks since we made that decision. We told you shutting down wasn't something you just turn the light off and leave the room.
Yeah, we've
Shutting down
acknowledged- we've
takes a
acknowledged
while,
that and
and they're
agreed to this.
working on it, and they're working diligently on it with limited resources, but we've gotten engineers on it, we've given you plans. Vinnie wrote you a long list of things that you didn't like, but it was a plan. He's going to DEP.
But it was a plan
They've
with no
moved.
specifics.
Yes, it had specifics. If you read it, it says.
It was an tentative
moving-
plan, I'll give you that, so
Okay.
we're there.
And he said the odor control is exactly what it says in the regulations, and the vector control isn't necessary because they're not taking food waste or whatever. He's done everything you've asked him to do, he really has. And he's trying very hard to shut this down. The order isn't going to serve you any purpose. He's getting this done. We're doing it. Isn't that the bigger purpose? You want to give him fines?
We don't want to find him, we just want to make sure that there's something to hold over it, basically.
You have
doesn't
something.
fall
He's
through.
moved it. He's moved it. He's given you dates and deadlines. They're in the minutes. You can issue your orders the next time we're here. We're going to talk about the berm.
But there have been things that haven't been complied that said, so let me walk you through this. So you understand I am being professional. I've been very patient for
You
the
don't
last.
act very professional.
Just let me finish.
Maybe I won't.
Then don't.
Gentlemen, please.
Then don't.
You don't
But-
act professional. When you
but
start
here's-
pointing at somebody and yelling and
Because someone
stuff.
accused at me and
I
was
didn't hear
talking.
anybody accuse
She
anybody.
accused of me and she was talking over me, and it's on tape and we can see it.
Gentlemen, let's take a deep breath, we made our point. Okay, Peter, you made your point.
So when we put this plan in place a year ago for the neighbors to report in, part of that was for the composting operation to also provide a log of activities to date, so that we could cross-check and say, okay, well, there's lots of odor. Oh, and look what they're doing on this day. And then from there, we could take that data and make a decision on the data on how to operate so that everybody's, that we can go forward with this. Everybody agreed with that plan
A year ago.
a year ago. To date, I still have not seen a log from those operations. Okay? So that was 3 meetings ago?
No, there is a log, so,
I haven't seen it. Nobody's,
Log, it's been presented to the board, so I mean.
No,
no, it hasn't.
Sorry, did we ever get a log on activities?
No. So that's one.
Which.
Number two, there was a request to get a surveyor out to that property, to those properties, to confirm where the boundaries were, where the 250 setback was.
Was this from DEP or is this from you guys?
No.
This is
That's
DEP.
DEP.
Right. But, and they would say, yeah, we've contacted someone, but, we'll get to it. I mean, no. So, and now it's finally here, after a lot of cajoling and pushing. And then if we go back to the minutes from 3 meetings ago,
I've only been here for 2.
I think it's 3 meetings. Anyhow, let's go back to the minutes when Vinnie and Richard were here and all the abutters were here. This was not last meeting, it was the meeting before.
2, yeah.
So 2 meetings ago, this is the third of the 3 meetings. We'll put it that way. Go back to there. I brought up a motion that we should require them to suspend their operations until we see the log, until we see the surveyor results of where that berm is, and a plan to address these things, including how we can enforce them. I brought that up. No one came to me, and no one came to this board during that meeting before I said that and said, well, we're going to shut it down. In fact, I said that. I wanted to make that motion. It was during that discussion that Vinnie said, we're just, you know what, we're going to shut it down. We're just going to shut it down, and we'll provide a plan to it. Now, the attempted plan that was provided had no details to it, which is what we asked for. And in fact, the only thing they complied with is I requested and said, it's nice to have the plan. Can I have it a few days ahead of time so I can review it instead of getting something the day of the meeting when I don't have time to review it? So, over the last year in which I've been involved with this, there have been time and time and time again where they have not followed through with what they've said they're going to do. They have dragged their feet, and they've said, based on everything I read, things that are not entirely accurate. Composition of the berm, etc. Now, the reason why they're able to do it is because to date, we've had no real authority to enforce anything.
Well, we haven't exercised that.
We haven't exercised it to date. What would an order do? It would seem to me it would do that.
So here's the issue with an order, and we need to ask ourselves this. Everybody meets their date and follows through, it's a moot issue. If they don't, we have something to hold over.
And I would agree with that, too.
No, if you exceed it 2 weeks, you get bad weather, and we have the discretion to not enforce that.
Which makes sense.
It seems to me that given the situation, given the angst of the neighbors, given, if at the very least, disagreement between the parties, then we may want to clarify what's going to happen and how in an order.
Sounds good.
So for you guys, it may be a little bit of a slap in the face, but if you do everything you say you're going to do, it's a non-issue.
No, we're moving forward to getting it done, that's the best I can do by stopping
And
the operation.
I think
can't
we've
do
been
it
patient.
overnight. I know.
We didn't jump down your throat the minute we
No.
got complaints, we got data. You said you needed till December. I think even the neighbors have been patient, so it's not like we're being unreasonable here. There were some things that have stuck in my craw, I'll be honest.
Well, we can
But
move
to me, in
forward.
order, you've agreed to it, let's ensconce it in a legal agreement. Would be my suggestion.
Well, we'll see what happens. She's coming back in, 2 weeks?
No, a month.
Month?
2 meetings. I think you need to take into consideration that, like what Sherry said with 4th of July, and just
Yeah, but
be reasonable with getting someone from DEP.
Yeah, no, I have no
here.
problem with waiting a month on that. I think that's reasonable. I'd rather do it right than rush it. Nobody's pushing the date on that. If you say 2 meetings, that's reasonable. I don't think anybody's questioned that. On the berm, the rest of the stuff moves forward as we've discussed. So, and again, I agree with you. If it's not part of the compost operation, the burn's not our issue. If it is, I think we need to consider it part of the nuisance. And that, we'll follow whatever DEP says. Now, they've already made a determination. We're giving you the benefit of the doubt to go back to them. We could move today and say, hey, DEP's said what it is. But we're giving you time to convince DEP yet again. So I don't think you can accuse us of being unreasonable. The neighbors don't think that we're being unreasonable, they're shaking their heads. But a month from now, DEP is still saying that berm's part of the compost operation. My vote here would be that we need to consider it part of this.
So 2 meetings from now is July 26th?
Can I get clarity on what's going to happen on the 26th?
The 26th, we've already got basically a verbal plan from these folks on what they're going to do with the windrows absent the berm. Essentially, they won't be work on Saturday. There'll be no new organic material brought in. They'll continue to compost and screen and do what they usually do, which may create some odors, but they'll be taking those windrows out in the interim. So that starts before tonight, I assume, right? With the existing windrows.
What starts before tonight as far as?
What I just discussed, no new organic matter.
No, nothing new, no more leaves are coming in, no.
Right, you've moved the stuff outside the 250.
It's out of the
foot.
250, it's
Right.
gonna have to get.
So you're
turned to-
working on moving those existing windrows, not the berm, out of there, and you expect to have that, and that will be done by December 1st, right?
Yes, that's what we're gonna do.
So with the exception of the berm, we've reached that agreement tonight. What I expect to happen in the next meeting is we will have, again, clarification from DEP on what they consider the berm to be and whether that should fall into this. This board can vote otherwise, but I suspect the board will go along with whatever DEP says. We can have that discussion at the board. Some may say it's not, some may say it is, but I suspect what would happen, the board would agree with DEP. And at that point, it seems like we may want to consider an order to ensconce all of this into an order, which is basically, you shall do this or else.
No problem.
Yeah, it's getting done in steps. As far as where the windrows were positioned, you know, if the berm does have to go, which I don't want it to, I mean, those leaves had to get moved back before you could even get up there to get in there.
Now, the discussion I expected from you folks, and I didn't hear, wasn't whether the berm was compost or not. You know, you can continue that for another month. I don't think it's going to lead you anywhere. But is there a benefit to having the berm there with the wood operation and the loom operation? That was the discussion I would have expected from you folks, and we would have listened to both sides and taken it to the neighbors, and it seems like the neighbors don't want it. You didn't choose that discussion. You chose a different path. I think you took the wrong one, to be honest, but that was your choice. So we will address the berm 2 meetings from now, once we
So
have
it's a benefit
clarification.
to have it as for privacy, you know, I mean, it's like a nice fence there and it's starting to vegetate itself and I could plant
I
some
think the
shrubs.
disagreement might be how nice that fence is, though, Richard. So-
Yeah, but you can't see that fence from their property and it's on my land. If you're sitting in there, you can't see it. How can you see
Well,
that?
regardless,
I can see it from the corner of.
Well, from maybe from the corner of the road you can. you know what I mean?
Let's talk about the
From in the
berm.
Anyway,
We find out what DEP
the only moot
says
point on,
that we
the
have
only
to do
point
with
on
it.
the berm that isn't moot, which we should have clarification on by in 2 meetings, is whether DEP considers to be part of the compost operation. At which point, this board can discuss on where we think it belongs in our efforts, and then whether we think we need an order to ensconce all this in order. Agreed?
We're
Very
coming
good.
back in a month.
Thank you for your time and this will be taken care of, you know? We
All
don't
right.
need to get excited over a pile of leaves, you know?
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Night.
Thanks for coming, everyone.
Okay. Motion to adjourn. Is anybody?
Go, John.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.